This is perhaps, something like a preface or precursor to another reading that I want to do today. And I intend, that reading to follow along the line of a piece that I performed on October 26th. 2022, and the title of that piece, which is framed as a kind of series, is Notes Toward an Avant-Garde Poetry and Poetics of Aggression, Regression, and or Digression. And that piece is called a Few More Things I Knew About Chelsea. And then to give some background regarding the origin of that piece. And how and why I produced it. It began with my misremembering of a question that Charles Bernstein asks the poet Bob Perlman, and I had remembered the question in very abstract terms. I had remembered the question as, "What do you think of Chelsea?" And that question and its open-endedness, I thought of as being, particularly poetically generative, so that one could begin with this question. What are all of the ways that one can conceive of Chelsea, or what are perhaps all of the memories that one has of Chelsea? So the thinking. What do you think of when you encounter this string of morphemes that compose the string of phonemes that compose this morphological unit, Chelsea, and then I realized that I misrecognized or not misrecognized, but misremembered, right, the terms of the question, and that question was actually. What do you think of Chelsea as a neighborhood to live in? And so the idea, of neighborhood, is probably what's motivating me today. And I want to produce a piece, and based on the same method that I performed for a few more things I never knew about Chelsea, for this neighborhood called Astoria. And the inspiration for choosing Astoria is, of course, we've just done a piece in which, Astoria figures significantly, and the reason that it figures significantly is because, I'm picking up on a reference that was made to a grand piano. And as, probably, most of my audience is aware, one of the significant locations for the manufacturing of grand pianos is Astoria. And what some of my audience and listeners, might not be aware of is that I actually spent, a number of years located in the neighborhood of Astoria in Queens, and quite familiar with it, perhaps as familiar with Astoria almost as I am with any other neighborhood that I've ever lived in. And so I like the idea of there being a few more things I never knew about Astoria, when I actually quite a bit. And the title of this piece, the overarching title of the series, Notes Toward an Avant-Garde Poetry and Poetics of Aggression, Regression, and Digression. Well, that grew out of another, the first being misremembering, but this was, misperceiving or not misperceiving, but being unable to perceive one of the words that Bob Perlman used to describe what isn't his non sequitur response, which I had claimed before, but it really isn't a non sequitur, because he openly admits that he's not particularly interested in the question that Charles Bernstein asked. He says, well, fine, but what I'm really interested in. So that open admission, right, of like switching switching to a different content and addressing a different question that wasn't asked really like takes it out of the framework through which we might regard it as non sequitur, right? If it were non sequitur, it would correspond in a certain way to this idea of the paratactical and this sort of endless repetition of the preference for paratacticality over hypotacticality, and what's sometimes constructed as this linear progress of events in time that's supposed to constitute story or narrative, which of course has never constituted story or narrative, and which I've attempted to critique, in various ways over many decades without, much interest. I guess the simplified, opposition between, story and collage is more appealing, perhaps because it is, simplified and easy to get a handle on. But in this that piece that we've been performing called Notes Towards a Meta-Poetics of Paranarratology, the muse of transgression is Parabasis or Parabasisia has emerged as a significant figure in this discourse, and so it occurs to me that a word that I didn't initially formulate as a possibility among among these three possibilities that I generated for this word that I was unable to entirely perceive in Bob Perlman's discourse could be transgression. So we may need to change the title. Bless you. I may leave this title, Notes Toward an Avant-Garde Poetry and Poetics of Aggression, Regression, and or Digression, but add to the following segments of this series transgression as another possibility. The erratum, which kind of takes the form of a footnote for this piece, recognizes the fact that I refer to the form of the poetry or poetics, that I'm going to produce as anagrammatical when it's in fact acrostic, right? And this apparent example of parapraxis I actually performed a number of years ago in relationship to a request that was made on the part of one of my then acquaintances regarding some of the work that I had been doing in a long piece that now doesn't exist any longer, although may exist in a lot of my work seems to exist in other people's collections, even if it doesn't exist in mine. So someone may be able to piece together the fragments of this work, Shaman Machine, and locate some of this material. But I had produced a long discourse, describing a way of working, and now I don't remember which way that I organized it. But I performed a kind of, displacement, or if you prefer a cinematic, term, desynchronization of these word units, and I substituted either anagram for acrostic, or I substituted acrostic for anagram, and I can't remember which
direction that it went in. But I produced this long discourse and referred to either
this way of working, anagrammatically as a way of working acrostically or acronistically, and or I produced a long discourse about working acronistically and referred to it as working grammatically, and the reason was, to give certain hints and clues regarding the way another piece, that I was in the process of producing in relationship to this acquaintance's work, could be read and could be interpreted, and that work, was configured as a series of marginalia. And I had been thinking about, these paratextual, they're not really paratextual, but they're focal, I suppose, examples of textuality that would include, things like footnotes and marginalia and perhaps other inscriptions, within volumes, perhaps, tables of content or indexes and other examples of, as I said, not paratextual, but perhaps supplementary to the the focal dominant of whatever the textual representation might be, or discourse might be, and so this reference, as erratum, and erratum would be another example, or note benes, right, or the inscriptions made when we put in emails regarding, and office notes that often frame and contextualize these discourses in different ways, and those are interesting to me because even though they're not paranarrative in the strict sense, but they can produce examples of framing that can be read as, in some ways, paranarrational. And that reminds me, very much of what we were talking about with Kathy Acker. And then there's a fiction, or there's a series of fictions that she produces as her work, and those generally are recognized as novels or sometimes other forms. There is a certain amount of indeterminacy in what one calls that kind of collage material. But then there's also the fictionalization, through which she characterizes herself as an autobiographical subject, and that also opens, as we've been talking about, to discursive domain. So these and I'll refer to them as as paratextual, even though that's perhaps not the correct designation. But these examples of these kinds of framings and texts alongside, take on interesting characteristics and qualities in relationship to whatever is perceived as the central focus, or central sets of focus, foci of the fictional or autobiographical presentation. And so I thought so I thought that as a preface to the construction of a few more things I never knew about Astoria that I would perform in a similar way, or similar procedural manner, this particular erratum, and perhaps the confusion between what constitutes the anagrammatical and what constitutes the acronistic might come into the play here. 1. True arm. The body of my work represents an example of the set, unique neurocognitive physiomotor, either here or elsewhere. As they say in literary circles, regard it, whether it is motivated by unconscious wishes,
2. Rum rate. Regard it, whether it is an intertextual reference, unique neurocognitive physiomotor identity gives rise to. Matters I shall offer no opinion here. Readers, as materiality, memory, and whatever, and personal contexts may be. This slip was motivated by unconscious wishes, experiential difference that my unique neurocognitive physiomotor identity gives rise to. 3. Maturer. Materiality, memory, at, or approximately at, text here, unconscious wishes, in the manner in which reference that points to further related experiential differences regard it, whether it is.